welcome to Public Global. I'm Neelu Vyas. United States has named India along with China a state actor in enabling direct and indirect supply of precursor chemicals for illicit fentanyl drug production by criminal organizations. The use of fentanyl, among other synthetic opioids, is the most lethal drug which is trafficked in the United States and has claimed the lives of more than 52,000 Americans and in 12 months ending in October 2024, according to the annual threat assessment of the US intelligence community, which a report which was released recently this week. Now, what has the report said? These groups are often enabled both directly and indirectly by state actors such as China and India. Now, I'm underlining this bit because they've named China and India together as sources of precursors and equipment for drug traffickers. And the report was published by the Office of Tulsi Gabbard, who is the US Director of National Intelligence. Now, what the report says that China remains a primary source country for illicit fentanyl precursor chemicals and pill pressing equipment, and notably followed by India. And notably, this is the first time that US has placed India on the same level as China in connection with the supply of precursor chemicals used by drug cartels to manufacture opioids like fentanyl. And last year's report mentioned India as just one of several countries from where the Mexican groups were sourcing chemicals to a lesser extent. And the report obviously comes at a time when US President Donald Trump has made combating opioids a political priority, shaping his foreign policy decisions. And earlier this month, Trump had said his administration would not rest until we have ended the fentanyl epidemic in America once and for all. Now, if Donald Trump is so insistent that he will not rest, and if he has named, his government has named India and China as state actors, what does it mean for the Modi government? We'll try and understand this issue. Joining me is independent media analyst Siddharth Sharma. So, thank you so much, Siddharth, for joining. And my first question to you is, what would you really say to this threat assessment report on fentanyl, which has named India as a state actor? What does it mean for the Modi government?
Well, it looks like it's an ignominy we could have done without, because there are so many charges flying around in the international circuit. But a drug charge, we know in USA or even everyone knows that drug charges, drug cartels, these are things that nations like Colombia, Mexico, they have a bad name about it. Getting India in that ignominious group is a very sad day. It's a very sad commentary. Now, essentially, it seems like playing with pythons has its own perils. Seems India's Pradhanji has put on a python called Trump administration around its neck. Now, when and how this python is going to suffocate is up to the python. It's the python's choice now when it is going to suffocate. Now, what is this fentanyl? This fentanyl is essentially a narcotic. It's a composition just like paracetamol. When we have a fever, we take some tablet called Dolo 250 or Dolo 500, but under that the composition reads as paracetamol. Now, fentanyl is also this kind of a composition in many drugs. It is highly narcotic. It is very addictive and especially very fatal. As you rightly said, nearly 50,000 USA citizens have died in the last 1 year alone due to fentanyl overdose. Now, fentanyl is procured from a raw material. So fentanyl can be produced using two ways. One is opium cultivation. Opium can be a raw material for that, or it can be synthetic also. Now, surprisingly, as far as opium is concerned, India has doubled the area of opium cultivation from 30,000 acres to 60,000 acres in the last 10 years. In the last 10 years of this government's administration, surprisingly, opium cultivation area in India has nearly doubled. So it's for the government to answer that a thing that is banned worldwide, socially it is banned, health-wise it is bad. How come that cultivation is increasing in India? The second is the synthetic part, that in fentanyl there is a synthetic component also. Now we also know that in 2018 in Indore, 10 kg of fentanyl was seized by the government. In 2018 itself in Mumbai, 100 kgs of fentanyl was seized. Now in 2025, US Customs caught a shipment from India of fentanyl, and they have already indicted a pharmaceutical company called Vasudha Pharma in a New York court. Now, what is essentially happened is that because the government of India itself is admitting that the raw material for fentanyl, that is opium, production in India is increasing, as well as synthetic fentanyl raw materials being caught in India, in Indore, Mumbai, as well as US customs and US indicting Indian companies like Vasudha Pharma. It seems that US has a, a decent amount of proof here, not just charges. Charges are something that keep flying around, but when the US is indicting a Indian company in a US court under US judiciary, that means that they have a dossier, they have proof, they have a complete picture of how this entire fentanyl is getting produced, partly in India, also China and other places, because we know there is something called as a golden triangle, that is South Asia, Afghanistan, India, Sri Lanka, Burma, China, the South Asian part, where the US Justice Department says that this is the golden triangle from where most of the narcotics get produced. Now they come to US shores, they also go to Mexican shores, they might go to Colombian shores, they get processed and they get sold in the US. So I think what has essentially happened is that this is a inglorious, not a very glorious day today if the US government is not just charging India but indicting Indian companies for indulging in narcotic trade. I think it's not a very good commentary for us Indians.
But how can this play diplomatically between the two nations, coming as it does when Donald Trump is already announcing tariffs, and there is already a tariff bomb is already there, on the heads of so many countries. But now this fentanyl controversy playing out and calling India as a state actor. Uh, of course, it is embarrassment, but diplomatically, how will it be used against India as far as Donald Trump is concerned? He's already, I mean, he's always known to, arm twist, and he's known to use it for his own political convenience. How will this play out diplomatically between America and India?
Before how US will use this diplomatically, let us see how India can respond to this. India can respond to this in two ways. Either there is already a case in the US and it can go and prove its case in the court of law that no, this fentanyl production is not happening in India. This is from somewhere else. We are not to be blamed. And if we can prove it in the court of law in the US, then nothing like it. Other thing is that diplomatically, just like USA seems to be arm twisting us and charging us of these kind of not so nice acts of drug peddling, India should also go for a tit for tat and start sanctioning US entities. There are so many US entities in India. There are big companies, US companies, for example, Pepsi, Coca-Cola. These companies are functioning in India. These are basically US companies. If US can sanction India, why isn't India sanctioning the US? There are so many things that India can sanction on the US. So these are the two ways that India can handle it. But from the US perspective that you asked, I think US, as I said in the earlier my opening statement, playing with pythons has its own perils. When you say Abki Bar Trump Sarkar, the new Trump administration, that has become a python around India's neck right now. India has put that python in its neck voluntarily. Now it is going to constrict you on in multiple ways. In multiple ways, it is going to constrict you on tariffs. It is going to constrict you on certain issues. Yesterday itself, in the United States, I believe, has come up with some kind of indictment of an Indian agency, India's top premier sleuth agency, the RAW, Research and Analysis Wing. One of the departments, U.S. Department of Justice, I believe, has also recommended sanctions against India's entity called RAW. So US has right now become like, python would be a wrong word. It's like an octopus with 8 arms. It has surrounded the India's present administration, the BJP government, in multiple ways. One is the tariffs. The second is this drug thing. The third is that raw thing. When it says that it is Indian external agency has tried to kill a US citizen on US soil. Now, whatever that citizen was doing is a different question, but that is a charge on you. There we all know there is a charge on Mr. Adani also. There is a court summon on Mr. Adani also. So in multiple ways, I think US is constricting India's present government. Now, how it will use it, whether to constrict, there are two ways that diplomatically it will plays out. It can keep on constricting India on these issues and keep on constricting to whatever level it wants. Otherwise, it can also say that I can constrict you in these ways. Otherwise, this is a leverage that I have, and you will have to give me certain margins or certain leverages on in other places, just like maybe tariffs. If the indications are right, what we have been seeing past 1.5 months is that when the Indian Prime Minister visited the White House and they came up with a joint statement, surprisingly, the Indian Prime Minister also agreed to import duck meat from United States, as well as what do you say, cattle fodder. So I don't understand that if India and America are going to have a business, why can't we have a business in missiles? Why can't we have SpaceX technology flying not just from Cape Canaveral but from Sriharikota also? India can have those kind of cutting edge technological transfer deals with US, but rather than that, we are going to have cattle fodder from US. Cattle fodder, that essentially means that US is trying to use India as its dumping yard. Cattle fodder is something that nobody uses. It's not for
No,
human consumption.
but Siddharth, that is fine. But Tulsi Gabbard was here in India. Do you think that she must have raised this issue with the Modi government during her negotiations? Because immediately after she reaches America and then this threat assessment report comes out, she calls out India's name. And I mean, I'm not able to understand. Did these negotiations or did this discussion on fentanyl at all take place between India and America during Tulsi Gabbard's uh, visit to India, or is it like, she goes and then she calls out India's name? Because this leaves us wondering, again, what kind of a relationship is Modi trying to have with America? On one hand, he says Donald Trump is his friend, everything is all right. Even on tariffs, we are told from the sources within the MEA that no, we'll try and work around some deals. 2 days are left. We're still working on a trade process. And then this fentanyl sword again is hangling like the sword of Damocles. So, what does it really mean?
In international diplomacy, in international diplomacy, there is a saying, a diplomat is one who asks you to go to hell in such a nice way that you actually look forward to going there. So, basically, we will have to understand that Tulsi Gabbard had come to India. Her name might have carried her maiden name might have carried an Indian connotation like Tulsi, but that does not mean that she had come here to receive Sangam water in a Kalash from you. That was not her purpose. She had come with a clear purpose, and that purpose was exactly this. That is what she would have told India. She would have given certain dossiers, she would have given certain proofs, and said that this is the thing we have about India. So how are you going to deal it? Either you are going to give me some concessions on some other front, or I am going to go public about this. Now you became happy that she had a Indian connotation in her maiden name Tulsi. So let me give her a bowl of kalash of Sangam water, and everything will be hunky dory. But you have to understand, a diplomat, essentially she came to India and asked us to go to hell in such a nice way that we actually landed up there. So
Right.
obviously she did not come to India to receive that Sangam water kalash. No, she had come with an agenda. So these are the agendas that have come out. It becomes now very clear that after Tulsi Gabbard goes back to USA, two or three things that were not in the picture earlier suddenly have come to the fore. One is that the US is saying that India's external agency RAW needs to be sanctioned because it is carrying on killing for hire in the US. It is saying that India is involved in drug trade. All these are, if these charges are wrong, which I believe would be wrong. As an Indian, I would not like to believe that our external agency would go on killing somebody on foreign shores. I as an Indian would not believe for a single moment that India would be involved in drug trade. So these charges by the US, if they are false, India should either prove it to the US that they are false, or sanction certain US entities for falsely bringing bad repute to India. If India is not doing either of these things, that means that somehow, somewhere down the line, this octopus has suffocated India's present political dispensation, the government, so much that the government has no actual leeway to work around. Its hands and legs are tied. They are straitjacketed. In diplomatic terms, it's called as a straitjacket. You put India in a straitjacket. India is now agreeing to whatever basically US is saying. India has agreed to become US's dump yard of cattle fodder. India has agreed to receive duck meat from US. We in India know that although a lot of Indians are non-vegetarians, but duck meat is not part of Indian staple diet. Now, how come something that is not part of India's staple diet is going to get imported from the US? We don't understand. Right now, India is buying, for example, India right now is buying cheap oil from the Middle East countries, because Middle East is closer to India. You start from maybe Iran or Kuwait or Saudi Arabia and cross the Arabian Sea and land up at Gujarat, where the India's biggest refineries and ports are. So that the transportation is cheaper. Now, between Modi ji and Mr. Trump's joint declaration, it also says that India has agreed to make United States its biggest crude oil supplier. So that means that henceforth India will have to buy oil from the United States. Now, please imagine, the United States is half that world away. Half a world away, you will have to take oil from the United States and bring it all the way across Mediterranean Sea to India. The transportation charges itself will become higher. So how come? So basically, India is going to buy costlier fuel from United States. Why did India agree to this? We don't know. So that goes on to show that there is something in the background that is happening, that United States seems to have put the present BJP government dispensation, in some kind of straitjacket that is slowly becoming very obvious.
So we'll have to wait and watch how this fentanyl controversy pans out for India and America. Thank you so much, Siddharth, for joining. Thank you.